people who couldn't attend either session 1 or session 2, today is obviously session 3 in the 6-month program that STBB is hosting. We've had a lot of requests from people who've attended the sessions and people who couldn't attend the sessions thus far for the video link to the recording and or the PowerPoint presentation for the previous sessions. So we are about to have a meeting this week to decide as STBB whether we are going to make the video recordings public on our website and whether we are not, because obviously, you know, a lot of preparation go into these PowerPoint presentations and the presentations as such. So we will let you know, sorry, if we do post them onto our website, and if we don't, then if you need an extra session to be hosted at some other point before December or early next year, you know, we're going to continue our training. POPI is only applicable or only fully applicable and effective in July 2021. So I suspect there is, like all this legislation and new legislation that comes out, that there will be the need for refresher training earlier next year or closer towards July 2021. What we're trying to do with the 6-month program is just to set the mindset, to get the mindset of the real estate practitioners ready for you to just start thinking about certain things. So once you see the policies being implemented and the changes happening within your organization or within your offices, that it's not a massive surprise. So I think that that's really the aim of our sessions. So as always, after today's session, the PowerPoint presentation will be available to be sent to the attendees, all of you guys who have taken the time to log in. Oh, no sound, only peak. It's a sound very poor.
I can hear you perfectly, Melanie. So
yeah,
I think it might
sound is fine, Mel.
I think it's maybe connection problems. If the internet's not very good on your side.
Yeah, load shedding obviously doesn't help much either, because if you're used to using Wi-Fi, which is generally much faster than your normal cell phone service provider connections, then there is usually a delay. For as much as load shedding is concerned, I do believe that we will again this evening, as of from 4 o'clock, have load shedding at level 1. So we've just got to bait fast, as the Afrikaner would say. We've got to bait fast, guys. There's a lot of challenges lying ahead of us in the economy. I don't know if any of you saw the published results of the second quarter's economic performance over, the COVID period, for all intents and purposes, which is from April to the end of July. The South African economy shrunk with 51% in terms of the GDP. And obviously, being a conveyancer myself in a large conveyancing organization, we've seen the bubble. We've seen the property bubble. It's hit us as well. We've been very and pleasantly surprised with all the mass influx of work. A lot of property transactions are being concluded out there, and you guys must reap now, because you've sown for many years. And whilst the market is buoyant, you've got to grab as many transactions as you can, because inevitably, there's always a hangover from a downturn of 51% in our GDP growth. So we don't know really what to expect in the next 6 months and beyond. So yeah, it is important that we keep updated with regards to what's going on in the world economy. Even though, yeah, like I say, we're part of the same bubble as what you are. People are having record months in terms of sales and the mortgage originators. So I think what is important is not what lies ahead within 6 months. It's very unpredictable, but that we grab the transactions. We must get as much work as we can right now. Okay, so I think I'll start. We've got 132 participants. It is 4 minutes past 12. So for any of the attendees who wish to dial in hereafter, I think they can just catch up. So as I said about 10 minutes ago, welcome to all of you who's made the time to attend our third session in STBB's 6 months Gearing Up program in terms of POPI. I hope all of you attended session 1 and session 2. The content, I think, was quite interesting and quite valuable. Today's session hopefully will be as interesting and valuable as the last 2 sessions. Session 4, for which we'll send out all the links and the ads again, I'm going to invite one of our cybersecurity specialists who are subcontracted to STBB to come and address you guys and the attendees during session 4 for about 10 or 15 minutes, just surrounding email interceptions and fraudsters managing still to get their hands on funds meant for transactions, deposits. How is it possible that with all the security measures in place and that with all the firewalls in place and all the other, everything else that you and I, in other words, the conveyancers and the real estate organizations, with everything that we've done, how is it possible that these crooks are still able to intercept communication between ourselves and our clients? And as we go along in the presentation today, I want you to think about the likelihood of information being grabbed off your device, off your tablet. And have you ever really considered, the safety and the confidentiality of your client's information that you are, needless to say, and inevitably have access to on your devices? The devices seem to be the problem. But I want you to remember that as we go along through our presentation today. So just a very, very quick recap of what we did during session 1. We did a nice introduction. We also went through where one would find personal information and what one would do with the information. And then we gave you some tips and tools on how to conduct a gap analysis within your organization. Our gap analysis is exactly what it says, where you do an analysis of your entire business structure. If you are a real estate practitioner, you start writing lists in doing your gap analysis. You start identifying what your current processes are regarding clients' information in your rental division, what your current processes are regarding your clients' information in your sales division, and then you start breaking it down in terms of the questions that we asked during session 1 and session 2. So in session 1, that's what we did. And in session 2, which is our session from last time, I went through some suggested clauses required to be inserted, or just some examples of what we think we would now start needing on our emails as hyperlinks, opt-in and opt-out, where the consent form needs to go, how the explanation regarding FICA and why you're getting information for FICA, how that explanation needs to look in your mandate and in your information sheets. We do have a nice PowerPoint presentation on session 2, so please just let the key account manager at the STBB office know that you deal with if you want a copy of that PowerPoint presentation. Now, today's session, really deals with policies, because we can answer questions regarding why, when, how, who, from where we get information, how we store it, when we need to get consent, how we deal with direct marketing, etc., until we're blue in the face. But until all of that information, in other words, all the information that I've dealt with or will be dealing with in the 6 sessions, is put together and analyzed as in relation to what your organization is currently doing. And then a plan is devised on what needs to be done to get you guys ready for July 2021. A massive part of that isn't just the awareness, which I'm trying to create with these sessions, giving you examples and giving you screenshots. The ultimate is for the organization to take all of that, all of the discussions, all of the examples, all of the changes needed, and to condense it and summarize all the processes and procedures surrounding the business and the different departments within the business, and how the business will deal with personal information going forward, where it will be stored, etc., in a policy document. Policy documents are extremely important documents for us in the business world, for us as business owners, for us as franchisees, for us as responsible, responsible people in terms of POPI, responsible people in terms of FICA. We can't just be fooling around and hope for the best and just always think basically about confidentiality as our guideline. That's not enough. We've got to actually go and sit and look at what we do now in our different departments and in our different activities, what we would like to see, and then devise a policy. The policy that your organization adopts, which is called the privacy policy, must give proper guidelines to your client base as well as all employees within the organization with regards to client information, with regards to all the elements that involves client information. So hopefully after today, you'll have a better idea of what a privacy policy could and should look like, and what different sections should appear within the policy document. And I think you'll be very surprised to see to what extent the policy document needs to cover activities and documents and processes and habits and the guidelines which will be set out in that policy. Before I move on from the slide, I mentioned earlier that session 4 will involve an outside guest that I will invite to chat with you about cybersecurity, which will tie in with what I'm going to deal with partly today, devices. Devices, which include cell phones, and you're dealing with clients on your cell phone and also your tablets, and to a certain extent your laptop, which might be your own laptop that you use at home. You connect to your own Wi-Fi, might be an unsecure Wi-Fi, and often that is where the interceptions take place of clients' information. So Brent will chat with all of us and hopefully give us a lot more insight regarding cybersecurity, and that will tie in with cybersecurity, which we need, a policy which we need to see within your bigger privacy policy. So just a summary of what you should know by now. So this is a recap actually from session 1 and session 2. And you should actually by now have done a bit of a gap analysis, even if you've just done it very basically. We've started writing down the departments in your office, what is happening now, how you collect details now, why you're collecting details now, what you do with it, etc. So your gap analysis by now throughout the first 2 sections should expose why you collect information, from who you collect information, how do you collect information, because there are different ways and different sources. Where do we process the information? So got to think, it's not just your secretary typing in the information into one laptop or into one PC. Once that information goes into your organization system, where does it go from there? Do you also have access to that information on your cell phone? All of that needs to be, you need to summarize that. You need to start writing that out. With whom do we share the information? So if you've done your gap analysis, you would be able to have a nice summary written out of who you share your information with and why. And do we offer our clients an explanation as to why we are collecting the information? Gap analysis should further expose which of our standard documents must be amended and how. Where must we obtain consent to process clients' information and when? Do we get the consent on the telephone? Do we have to record the telephone consent that the client gives to us on the phone to add his details to a mailing list? Or do we need to get a physical consent? If it's a physical consent, can we email it? Or do we have to attach it to our mandate? Do we have to incorporate it now into our standard documents? By now, you should be able, or you should have an idea, a good idea of the answers to these questions. Your gap analysis should also have exposed where we store information and why we store the information. Do we store it for the current transaction? Do we store it for the current transaction, and once that's registered, what do we do with it? Do we store it so that we can use it for future purposes? You need to start writing these answers out And by writing the answers out to these questions, you are conducting your gap analysis. How long do we store information for and why? We don't even know. I mean, if I had to ask any of you that question now, you would say, well, I don't know. It's my company. I don't know. But have you considered that you have that same information on your cell phone? What happens if you upgrade your cell phone and that information is still on the old handset, or if your cell phone gets stolen? So you need to start thinking a little bit laterally. And have we identified exactly what we do with clients' information? Just a nice summary of what you need to do if you haven't done it by now, in terms of a gap analysis, and being able to write out the answers extensively to these questions. That's just a little recap from the previous two sessions. So once you've done the gap analysis, in other words, once you have gone and identified and written out lists of departments and answers to the previous slide's question, then you need to work as an organization. And if you're a small sole proprietor, or you're a small independent agency, then obviously you need to do this independently yourself for your independent agency. But if you're a real estate practitioner attending today and you are part of a bigger organization, then you need to ensure that your bigger organization and the head office and the legal department and the IT department in the bigger organization that you are an agent of is busy doing this gap analysis and working on the policy. Now, look at all the elements that will need to appear in the policy, because all these elements we see and we find during our daily activities. So there needs to be a policy regarding electronic data retention, because we load information onto our systems. That's called electronic data. So there must be rules and guidelines set out for the admin staff, for the agents, regarding the retention of information that you have loaded electronically. Physical data retention policy. Currently, we just assume it's 5 years. We don't really know where the files go. Where is your files? Where are the files that registered 2 years ago? Where does it go? Do you know where the archives are? Do you know how secure the archives are? What if the archives building burns down? There needs to be a policy in place for both electronic data retention, how, when, where, and how long, and also physical data retention. So this becomes part of your overall privacy policy. And equally, we need to start implementing electronic data disposal policy, as well as a physical data disposal policy. We have to now have reference and guidelines and rules written into our privacy policy in order for clients to access the privacy policy, so that they are able to see when their details will be disposed of automatically. Or if it's never going to be disposed of, then they need to know that as well. So within your larger privacy policy, you'll have a section regarding electronic data retention, physical data retention, electronic data disposal, physical data disposal policy. Look at the next one. What is your business, your office, your organization's policy regarding email, instant messaging, which is WhatsApp, and voicemail retention policy? What is the policy? Do you even know if there is a policy in place for email retention? As I said before, relate this part of your overall privacy policy to you using your cell phone at home on a VPN connection to receive emails for your organization or from your clients that are dealing with your organization. But you're receiving the emails on your own cell phone, your own device, your private device. Is there a rule in place how long you need to keep those emails, or must you delete those emails from your device? How long can you keep those emails? When must you delete instant messaging, your voicemails? Or must you save all the voicemails and download it somewhere into a cloud? Isn't that interesting? This is all going to form part of your overall privacy policy. These are the elements. What about VPN and password usage policies? As I said before, if I log onto my cell phone at home and I wish to access STBB's emails on my cell phone device at home, my IT guys have set my cell phone up with STBB's VPN connection, which is obviously a remote connection. That is all good and well. But once the email has been read by me, How do I know that Microsoft doesn't have access to the content of that email on my device? Because my cell phone is Microsoft driven, and I don't know if there's a McAfee or a firewall built into my cell phone. There might be a firewall built into my STBB emails. But as soon as those emails are opened up onto my cell phone, who sees it? We don't even know. So there needs to be a policy in place specifically setting out who may access VPN, when they may access VPN, passwords, how often passwords for your device must be changed, what type of passwords you may use. You cannot have the same password for your cell phone as your tablet. You cannot have the same VPN password as for your cell phone device. All of these policies now need to be developed and needs to be inserted and needs to be quite clear in the overall privacy policy as a section thereof. There needs to be a teleconferencing policy. You and I all are currently teleconferencing. We are not sitting in the boardroom in our Cape Town office downstairs and training physically, face to face. We are currently teleconferencing. I mean, how do we know that fraudsters are not dialing in? I mean, for as much as we know, our password protection system within Zoom is strong enough, but we just don't know. So you do need to develop a teleconferencing policy for as long as you're going to use Zoom, MS Teams, and any other webinar platform and process. Do these sessions get recorded? If they are recorded, who do we share them with? Do we want to make it public? Do we not want to make it public? All of these things need to be included in your main privacy policy. The information that I share with you today might include clients' information. It's our firm's information. It's all confidential. So there needs to be a section in your overall privacy policy that deals with teleconferencing, the rules regarding teleconferencing. There needs to be a policy regarding incident reports. So there needs to be a process set out that people and the organization and clients can refer back to if an incident of confidentiality breach has occurred. For instance, I'll give you an example. This happened in our firm in the last week. This has happened many times to many other firms, but it is a real example. So listen to this. One of our attorneys was in email communication with a prospective purchaser who, as with many purchasers, would contact us for a quotation on costs. So that happened over email. The attorney emailed the prospective purchaser the quotation for the costs and never then again dealt with the real purchaser. Somewhere there, the correspondence was intercepted. It wasn't intercepted on our email because it's impossible with our firewalls. It wasn't intercepted on the client's email because he works for a big organization and it's impossible to intercept those emails. But somewhere on a device, the content of that quotation email was intercepted. Someone could get and grab that information because obviously cell phones, devices, not as secure. So the fraudster posed to be STBB to the buyer and posed to be the buyer to STBB. And somehow the buyer then, on the fraudster's request, with the buyer thinking it's STBB, on an email, paid hundreds of thousands of rands to a fraudster's bank account with Capitec. The money's gone. And the immediate reaction of that client is obviously, how could this happen? It's not on my side. It must be on your side. But it's also not on our side. So it's not on the client's email side. It's not on STBB's email side. It's somewhere in between. So you need to have a proper process in place as to how IT deals with incidences, how you communicate those incidences with the staff to avoid it from happening in future if it's necessary. So there are incidences that happen from time to time, and also incidences regarding cell phones. If someone's cell phone is stolen or lost or destroyed, and you do an upgrade or you buy another cell phone, you do a SIM swap, that needs to be incorporated in your privacy policy. because in years gone by where our cell phones literally were ours, now it's not, it might be ours in name, but we do our business through our cell phones. So there needs to be an incident report policy as well. As was clear within our first 2 sessions, you and I both share clients' information with third parties. When you deal with a seller and a buyer, you share the information with us, with a mortgage originator. You share it with CMA. You share the client's details with Property 24. So third-party sharing is prevalent. It's a big part of your and my daily business activities. And there needs to be a portion in your bigger privacy policy dealing specifically with your organization's rules and guidelines regarding third-party sharing. When you may share, how you must share, with whom you may share. It's important to have a portion of your privacy policy dedicated to third-party sharing. I've mentioned internet, email, and cybersecurity policy. Once you start talking to the IT guys in your organization, once you start talking to them, you'll start realizing that there are a lot of upgrades that all of us need to do on our devices so that our VPN emails are completely secure. Because Microsoft, if you have an Android, and Apple, if you've got an Apple cell phone, have access to any bit of information that comes to that cell phone, whether it's VPN protected or not. Once you've opened that email, that content of that email is available to Microsoft. They have access to it. Very scary. Obviously, violation and penalties. And no guideline and policy is worth anything unless there's a deterrent. So we want people to follow the policies regarding all these things, the email, the VPN, the password change, sharing information. And if they don't follow your organization's rules, which will be contained in the policy, then they should know what could happen to them. It's important. So if they send videos unauthorized, or if they forward emails, which they're not supposed to in terms of the policy document, or whatever breach of your policy document might occur, there needs to be proper rules set out as to what you as an employer or a franchisor or me as a conveyancer attorney may do. And obviously direct marketing policy, because it's such a contentious and controversial part of POPI and the POPI Act going forward, it's important that you as an organization, or if you're a real estate agent attending today, that you are very clear on what your organization's direct marketing policy is. And obviously the attorneys associated with the organizations will assist and ensure that the direct marketing policy clause or clauses within your larger privacy policy comply with the rules and guidelines set out in the Act. And then lastly, GDPR. I don't know if any of you have heard about GDPR. I'm dealing with it a little bit today. It also needs to appear, or reference to it needs to appear in your organization's larger policy document. And I'll deal with it a little bit just now. But here you are able, in one screen, here you are able to see to what extent your organization's privacy policy will reach. These are the clauses that you'll see in the privacy document or in the policy document. This is a nice screenshot and a summary for you. And then, of course, with a little bit of detail within the policy document, there needs to be hyperlinks embedded on your email and your email signatures. Hyperlinks to opt in and out, prompt the client with regards to what they don't want you to do with information. You do need to start changing references to in your WhatsApps. You can't be using WhatsApps for business purposes if there's a policy in place regarding that, unless there's reference. Standard documentation needs to be reviewed. You need to review when the consent is required from the client. And if it's written consent which is required, you need to know exactly when. And then, of course, in all documentation, whether it's physical documents or whether it's electronic documents, there needs to be a link that your client or anyone that you're communicating with can click, and that takes you straight to your website and to your privacy policy. So there needs to be a hyperlink on all your documents relating to your organization's privacy policy. They're very, very important. So you also start seeing all these things unfold as part of the organization's review and implementation of its larger privacy policy. Now, I want to mention the GDPR to you because it's coming up in conversation a lot more than I thought it would. The GDPR is an acronym for the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, which was implemented in May 2018. So all the European Union countries belong to and enforce and have adopted the GDPR rules, the General Data Protection Regulation. And incidentally, our POPI Act must be seen hand in hand with the rules set out in the GDPR if your organization, not from time to time, but at any point in time, does business with or has clients from the European Union. So we can't ignore the GDPR and not mention it at all in our privacy policies. We've got to mention some compliance with GDPR because we are just not sure when we will be dealing with the European Union or with a European client. European clients include who? Still includes England until Brexit. We have a lot of European clients, Spanish, German, any of the European Union countries. So that is what GDPR, what that means. So when we refer to GDPR or your organization refers to GDPR or you start seeing GDPR compliance as a reference on documents or in your policy, now you know what it is. So I'm just going to give you a basic oversight of GDPR and you'll see that it goes hand in hand with POPI. There isn't too much additional obligations on you in terms of GDPR. It's all contained in the POPI Act, but there will be reference to the GDPR. So the European Commission in May 2018 implemented the GDPR. The GDPR is a privacy and protection framework. So it's similar to what you and I have been talking about in terms of our POPI Act, aimed at improving Europe's data privacy laws, and which could be described as a first cousin to our POPI Act. The POPI Act, which becomes fully effective or effected in July 2021, will apply, listen, to all businesses and organizations in South Africa, because all businesses and organizations collect data and information and process it to a certain extent, which by virtue of the interactions with South African consumers, we collect and process personal information. So the POPI Act applies to all businesses and organizations in South Africa. While the POPI Act provisions apply to the extent that businesses are registered and incorporated within the borders of South Africa, the GDPR is applicable to every organization on the African continent that processes personal data of EU citizens. So if you're a real estate agent and you have marketed your property online, and someone from Germany indicates interest in that property, your activity surrounding your interaction on email, WhatsApp, and telephone with this German prospective purchaser, emails to and fro, what they email to you and what you email to them, all the information regarding the property, all the information they send to you, all of that is covered by the POPI Act, clearly, but also covered by GDPR. So you see why reference to the GDPR is required in your organization's policy document. In practical terms, this means that a South African online shopping site, so, like Spree or Woolworths, that sells its product to EU citizens will be expected to comply with the GDPR, and so will real estate practitioners who deal with European buyers and sellers. A notable difference between the two, which isn't really going to affect you, but the GDPR, which obviously if that only applies, say, to Spain, and it's you've stuck or you found yourself in Spain and you're a Spanish estate agent and you're dealing with a Spanish seller and buyer, you're subject to GDPR. But the difference between the two is, it's quite interesting. The GDPR and POPI, the difference between the two is, while the GDPR only protects the personal data of natural persons. So if you're a Spanish estate agent with a Spanish seller and a Spanish buyer with a Spanish property, if your seller is a company, then you don't need to deal or think about any confidentiality. Whereas in South Africa, in terms of POPI, not only natural persons are protected, but all juristic persons as well. So that's the main difference. When preparing your organization's privacy policy, both the provisions of the GDPR and POPI must be referenced. So that's all I need you to know about GDPR and the POPI Act. It is important that you now also are exposed to the GDPR a little bit, all a little bit at a time, because you will see your organization's documents and privacy policies refer to the GDPR. So very basically, both in terms of GDPR and POPI, a privacy policy document is a statement that discloses some or all of the ways a party gathers, uses, discloses, and manages a customer or client's data by email, via WhatsApp, whether you use your device, whether you don't use your device, whether you're at the office, whether you use your own Wi-Fi, etc. Typically, companies share customer and client data with third-party business partners. I've mentioned this already. This is covered by the section in our privacy policy, which will be specifically regarding sharing of documents with information with third parties. And a suggestion in terms of the GDPR, which is not present in POPI, but which we're going to suggest to our organizations that we help their policies with, is that you must annually update and review your privacy policy, because things practically might change. You might move from an email-based business to an app-based business, or you might change the way in which your emails are sent, or you might change the way in which PDF documents are attached and password protected. So this is just a basic outline. Now, although I have not yet completed any real estate privacy policy from start to finish, I am busy with a few. Very interesting that there is no template that everybody will be able to use, because some businesses are small and only deal with, companies. Some businesses are big and have rentals and sales. Depending on your business structure, your policy document would look different to the next organizations. But what I want to give you now is examples of where I am seeing privacy policies pop up since the 22nd of June this year, when our president announced the promulgation of the POPI Act. All of a sudden, we are just seeing privacy policies and prompts to privacy policies everywhere. And if you take the time to look out for these prompts on your cell phone and your tablet, when you do see the privacy prompt, click on it and start reading policy documents for as much as possible, so that you start becoming familiar with what you will be seeing in your own policy document. So the first interesting example is that, as I said before, I've got an Android telephone, a Samsung telephone, and I try to open an Excel spreadsheet from an STBB email on my cell phone. So I get my STBB emails, I go into that email drop down, and I open the emails, and there's an attachment, which is an Excel spreadsheet, and I want to open it on my cell phone. When I click on that Excel spreadsheet, this pops up, the two screenshots to the right. So even Microsoft has now been forced, because POPI has been promulgated, to start amending the way in which they are communicating their confidentiality and privacy policies with us who own Samsung telephones or Microsoft-driven Android telephones. The first screenshot reads, which is the first one that pops up when I try and open the Excel spreadsheet, because Excel obviously is Microsoft-based. And if I open that spreadsheet, the info in the spreadsheet is accessible to Microsoft. They're in Florida. And it is quite mind-boggling. So it reads, getting better together. We'd like you to share optional diagnostic and usage data about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, blah, 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 all the Word apps. This is how we continue to improve. So this is Microsoft telling me, as a Samsung cell phone holder, when I open Excel or when I open Outlook, that they are actually taking this type of information and they are telling me what they're taking. None of this data includes your name. So my name doesn't go. File contents doesn't go. Maybe the size of the file goes. I don't know exactly what goes. Or information about apps unrelated to Office. Do you want optional data about your Office experience sent to Microsoft? I mean, I'm not an IT person, so I don't even know what that means. But you can click on Learn More. And if you click on Learn More, the second screenshot opens up. And it starts off with the title, Microsoft Respect Your Privacy. Look at that. When you entrust your data to Office, you remain the owner of the data, etc., etc., etc. So even Microsoft has implemented these prompts. If you utilize a Microsoft-driven Android telephone to open up external Microsoft documents, like an Excel spreadsheet. So this is the type of thing that your organization will have to start developing as part of your overall privacy policy. And it's obviously your business doesn't only do app, or it's not app-based, you're also email-based, but there will have to be a hyperlink to this type of narrative that is very clear as an embedded part of your signature that takes you to learn more. Open up your privacy policy. So this is just an example. The second example is this one. I tried to open a Mirror newspaper, which is a newspaper based in the UK, an article on the internet through Google. And look what pops up before the article opened up. We value your privacy. We and our partners use technology such as cookies and process personal data such as IP addresses and cookie identifiers to personalize ads and content based on your interests, measure the performance of ads, and content and derived insights about the audiences. So without me even knowing, just opening up a Mirror article, a Mirror newspaper article on my Android cell phone, on my Samsung cell phone, the fact that I clicked onto this article is already information that Microsoft is sharing and that the Mirror is sharing with all their associates. So you can either accept, click more options, and you can see who they will share your information with, and you can manage what they share. So don't just swipe off the next time this type of prompt comes up, because it's coming up on everything you do on your device now. Don't just swipe it off. Take the time to read through it, because this is the type of thing that your organization will also have to have in place in a different way, because you don't do app, like I said, app business. Mostly you do email business, or it's physical. So if it's physical business, this type of thing needs to be pre-printed on your documents or on your emails. Well, last week I tried to download a new Galaxy theme. I haven't downloaded a new Galaxy theme for ages. And look, even within my settings, I didn't even go onto a website. I clicked onto Galaxy themes, and this marketing choice prompt pops up. Everything you do, there's a privacy policy and marketing confidentiality prompt. So it says marketing choice. Receive promotions from Galaxy Store. This is separate to your consent to receive marketing information about Samsung products and services. For more information, see privacy policy. See, you can always change your mind and opt out via the menu. So don't just swipe these prompts away. Read through them. This is what you, as a supplier and as an organization who collects information and needs consent to market, need to implement. Now, I thought I'd take the time to actually go and look at Google's privacy policy, because all of us use Google a lot. I mean, Google is often my reference for even legal answers, even examples or legal documents. I go to Google and I type in the document or the legal question just to see maybe what the comparative answers are overseas or in America. Which is quite, I mean, if you now start thinking about how blindly and like little soldiers without brains, we have been feeding our information into Google. So every time I type something into Google, Google recognizes that it's me that types a search into Google. And so Google starts forming an idea of what I like and what I research. And the next thing you see on Facebook, an ad surrounding something that I've Googled a lot. Like once I Googled holiday destinations in the Middle East. And, you know, you do a lot of searches. You check out this city, and you check out Turkey, and you check out Istanbul, and you check out Egypt. The next thing, you get an ad on Facebook flights to Egypt. I mean, I always laugh at when people say they're in their kitchens and they feel like there's a man on the moon sitting, listening to what you are discussing privately in your kitchen. But it is because we Google stuff, and I wanted to go and check what Google's privacy policy looks like, because it's similar. You also have to have a privacy policy. So imagine being Google. If you feel overwhelmed, imagine what Google must feel. I mean, they're international, multinational, 5 billion, trillion megabytes a day. This is what it looks like. There, privacy policy. They've got an introduction, information Google collects, why Google collects data, my privacy controls as someone that uses Google, them sharing your information, how they keep your information secure, when they delete your information and when they export it, how they retain your information, compliance and cooperation with regulators, that's GDPR and POPI. And then if you go and have a look further on the same, if you click onto privacy policy, then it says, when you use our services, you're trusting us with your information. We understand this is a big responsibility and work hard to protect your information and put you in control. This privacy policy is meant to help you understand what information we collect, why we collect it, and how you can update, manage, export, and delete your information. This, guys, this slide is the secret, if you're still feeling confused, of what you need to start seeing on your own website, on your emails, on your letters, on your office, on your mandates, your information sheets. Those words. So you can say, if you, I don't know, if you're a Rawson's agent, or if you Keller Williams agent, or a Pam Golding agent, or whoever, whatever agency you work for, on the documents, on the emails, somewhere on the WhatsApps, on your website, in your policy, this is what you need to type. If Google, which is Microsoft based, if Google sets the trend with this, then we should be following this trend. So then, yeah, just sharing information, keeping, exporting about this policy-related privacy practices. So that's what, sorry, I actually duplicated a slide there. But this is the beginning when you open up, when you click on privacy policy, and then this is the contents, and that's a continuation of the contents. So if you compare this with what I had on a previous slide of all the different elements to your bigger privacy policy, you see, that is what it is going to comprise of. So Newmark Hotels, I saw this prompt when I saw an ad on Facebook for 2 nights at the V&A Waterfront Hotel to the value of 1,800 Rand for 2 people, 2 nights, with I think a bottle of champagne and I think a dinner included, which I thought was extremely good value. So I mean, that's how they entice you. So obviously I clicked on the ad, and when I clicked on the ad, it took me to newmarkhotels.com's website. You see that? Look what is on the front page of the website. If you click on that ad, get in touch. So obviously you can then contact us. You put your name, your surname, your telephone number, your email address, and then reservations. Look how clever they are. You need to register your details with Newmark Hotels to check availability for the special. So they entice you into putting your personal information into their system, which, needless to say, they're going to use for future promotions. But what has changed on websites such as these, like Google, like Microsoft, like STBBs will be in the future, like organizations will have to be, they now tell us what their privacy policy is, but you need to go and click on it. So at the bottom, you see this website uses cookies to improve your experience. We'll assume you're okay with this, but you can opt out if you wish. So I clicked on read more. And there starts the privacy policy for Newmark Hotels. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole privacy policy with you, but I actually screenshotted the whole thing for you. And when you get the PowerPoint, you can at your leisure read through it. It's quite faint, I'm sorry, but that's the way the screenshot, you know, when I copied it onto the slides, but you can read it if you look carefully. So the privacy policy for the V&A Waterfront Hotel, that's part of the Newmark Hotels group, includes an overview, application of this privacy policy. So it gives you like a basic summary, what this privacy policy means, personal information, what they collect. Look there, personal information you provide, that's what they collect. They collect your name, gender, nationality, date, contact information. Automatically what they collect, how we use the information. Look there, for processing, fulfilling and recording reservations. Use of your public content that is uploaded onto our website. Then they explain what cookies are. They then explain accessing, updating or deleting information. Then they talk a bit to us about, or explain to us what personal information is, what it means when they are allowed to disclose the information with some of their associates. And then it carries on, who they share the information with. Remember, the third party sharing there on slide, or on screenshot 1 and 2, amongst our affiliated companies to complete your transactions, service providers and agents, and for legal requirements. They will be sharing your information with third parties. Data processing and cross-border data. And so it goes. Security, what your choices are, third-party links, children's privacy, changes, and how to contact them. This is what a privacy policy looks like, guys. This privacy policy was implemented, if I'm not mistaken, in July 2020. And I must tell you just quickly that the Google privacy policy that I showed you, just a summary of, the backbone, was implemented on the 28th of August 2020. So Google has had to get its act together, and it's gotten its act together and published a new privacy policy on the 28th of August 2020 because of the POPI Act. Isn't that interesting? So this is just an example of what a policy document looks like, but this should again give you a good indication of all the elements that you in the real estate industry will have to put together in your bigger privacy policy. So in real estate, who should be involved in discussing the content of your privacy policy? Obviously, you need to get IT involved. Your IT guys, with the way in which we do business, which is electronically, email, WhatsApp, devices, cybersecurity, the IT guys or your IT department is extremely important in discussions, especially surrounding security. If you don't have a dedicated IT department or IT guy or girl, then you may need to invest a little bit of money in getting a contracted IT company to be involved in your privacy policy and confidentiality discussions. It is very important that you do have professionals on board in regards to the IT element of your business. You also need to have compliance people within your organization involved, because of course, needless to say, the compliance people are within the organization are the people that will develop the policy, keep it updated, ensure that people follow the guidelines in the policy. For instance, within STBB, I'm the FICA compliance officer. So I have to keep the FICA policy up to date, the RMCP up to date. I've got to do continuous training with with staff internally. I've got to send emails out regularly to remind people when, so I'm a compliance officer, which is why I'm involved in the POPI, privacy policy development of STBB. Obviously, the administrative arm of the company that ensures the company is current and compliant. So your admin ladies at the offices, the people who actually deal with the clients, the people who actually get the information from you as an agent and upload it into the system, they have got to be part of the discussion. Legal staff, so if you do have a legal department, obviously that department will be involved. If not, then again, like your IT, if you have to subcontract an IT company for a month or two to become involved in discussions, then you need to subcontract an attorney or a firm to assist, because you do need to get some legal people involved. And then, of course, your third-party business partners. Who are your third-party business partners mentioned here? CMA, Lightstone, there are many of those. Property 24. How do you guys know if your policy is 100% straight down the line, correct? We look at it, we're happy with it, you're happy with it, and then you find that Property 24 their privacy policy does not correspond with yours. You need to make sure that you also have meetings with your third-party business partners. You guys need to make sure that the conveyances you use have a proper privacy policy in place and cybersecurity principles in place. You need to make sure of that because you have all sorts of third-party business partners. You guys as real estate agents or real estate practitioners, you've got your compliance people, you've got your attorneys, you've got Property 24, you've got private property, you've got CMA, you've got Lightstone, you've got all these third-party business partners. So you've got to involve these people listed here in the discussion. And of course, you've got to take into account when you look at all the different elements, you know, all the different parts of the policy, these basic rights to which your consumers are entitled. So just to show you what STBB is doing, because you know it all is very theoretical until you see it practically. Because we also do business on email, like you guys. And because, like you guys, we are vulnerable, even though we've got the firewalls, we are still vulnerable because we're using our devices a lot. We are moving away from email communications in terms of sending bank details to buyers and getting buyers to send proof of payment on email. We're trying to move away from emails to avoid clients having emails intercepted and being scammed when paying large deposits, or clients having their identities cloned as we request and receive copies of IDs, bank account, tax number, utilities as unprotected PDF attachments on emails. Remember, if the email's on your cell phone, Microsoft's got access to it. They can look at that ID. They can look at that bank account. So what we are doing is that we are slowly moving away from email, and we are slowly moving towards clients completing documents on their devices. So we are upgrading our STBB Direct app. If you haven't downloaded the app for free from Play Store or Google Play, download it. Because what we are going to do is that we are integrating our system where the secretary sits and types. The system will send an email through the app to the client. And the client will be able to upload proof of payment by taking a screenshot on the cell phone and communicate that proof of payment through the app to the secretary at a desk, thereby avoiding emails. So we are going to start moving towards an app-based payment system within STBB. So this is what our STBB Direct app front page or home page looks like. Shortly, in the next while, we are triggering an upgrade, and then you will see eVault at the bottom of this white screen, which is the home page to our current app. And eVault is where clients will receive communication from us and where they will upload communication to us. There won't be any more emails. It's going to be so amazing. And we are so excited because app-based communication is very difficult to intercept. Very difficult, whereas emails are easy to intercept because the information between the two emails go into cyberspace and Microsoft or Apple has access to it. So STBB will be integrating our software with our app. Sellers and buyers will receive communication from our desks via the app. Sellers and buyers will be able to upload FICA, proof of payment, via the app. And we're quite proud of this development because we are just too vulnerable. You are too vulnerable, and so are we. But even an organization like STBB is slowly starting to change the way in which we do business. And then, of course, your service providers. But this will be part of the overall discussions amongst the people I've said, you know, in getting to a point where you are in a position to develop your own organization's big privacy policy. And that is our presentation for today. So before I take questions, I'm just going to take you back to the screenshot of all the elements which we will need to see in your privacy policy, so that if we have any questions, we can just relate it back. So this will be the index of your privacy policy. There might be even more parts to it, but these were the ones, or these are the ones that I've identified and the compliance team at STBB has identified in the start of us drafting real estate organizations' privacy policies. A lot more than what you're used to. I mean, your policy is now going to oblige you to change your password on your device, maybe every week, to avoid the same password becoming stale, and that you are prohibited from using the same password on your laptop, your tablet, and your cell phone. That type of thing is going to now start becoming even more important. So I'm just going to leave this screen on. So let me just see if there are any questions. Lonnie, I don't know, Lauren, if you guys have kept track.
I didn't see any questions.
There haven't been any questions, Mel.
Sorry?
I said that I haven't seen any questions. I think you've been so good in your explanations, and that must be the reason why there aren't any questions.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that this benefited all of you, because it mustn't be a question of fear. We mustn't be afraid of POPI. It's a good thing. You know, I've always wondered myself within legal practice, and I've been an attorney for 20 years. It's just how we throw around people's tax numbers, how we throw around people's passports and IDs. And I mean, I'm one of those types of people that actually look at it. Sometimes I look at a husband and a wife's IDs next to each other, and I always think, gosh, I can't believe that there's 40 years age difference between the two of them. But I mean, you know, it's this type of thing that we need to be more aware of. Those ID copies and tax numbers and, you know, CMA's contact lists. I mean, have any of us really thought about CMA's contact lists? What will CMA be doing by July next year? We are trying to find out what CMA and Lightstone's intentions are, because they have massive databases, and they don't only get the information from public sources like Deeds Office. CMA and Lightstone also get information from estate agents and from mortgage originators, like telephone numbers. They get telephone numbers from MTN and Vodacom, because having all that information together for you guys when you need to draw stats or a graph, you know, to do a price analysis or a price comparison, is CMA gonna need to get all the people on their databases permission? So it's important that all of us start looking at this screen in my presentation, because third-party sharing of information is a big on the real estate agenda. We all share information without a second thought. We all have our emails on our cell phones. We don't even think about the emails when we upgrade to a new cell phone. We don't even think about that. We don't even think about all the telephone numbers that we've kept in our cell phones for 20 years. I mean, I've got numbers. Yesterday I had a wrong number. The agent was actually looking for someone else, but he mistyped my name. And I got a phone call from an estate agent that I first did a deal with in 2002. So I never delete telephone numbers off my cell phone. I never delete emails, for that matter. You know, it's all these things that we just slowly need to start thinking about.
Now, there is a question. Oh, sorry. Can I just ask everyone to mute? How comprehensive should the write-up on respective clauses be?
Well, it needs to be comprehensive enough for anybody, whether it's a client, a staff member, an independent contractor, or anyone who looks at that clause in the policy document, which is now available on your website, to understand exactly what the limitations are and what you are allowed to do. So there's got to be those two sides in every of these clauses. So, I mean, if you want me to, I didn't do it today because it would have gone on too long. Next time I can give you some examples of what, for instance, a third-party sharing policy would look like. I'm very happy to do that. And maybe, you know, we can start next time's presentation with half an hour of me just showing you maybe one or two examples in detail of what these policies would look like. Like, for instance, I can show you third-party sharing policy, what exactly we think should be in there. It's not very long, but you'll see it's quite specific. And then maybe email, instant message, and voicemail retention policy. And I can show you what the sub-clauses would be in that, just to give you a better idea of how long or how short it should be. When you get this PowerPoint that we will share with you, remember, I've given you some examples that you can also go and research yourself. So I've given you Google. All of these have privacy policies. So you can look at these policies when they prompt on your cell phone to see how long they are. There is a privacy policy. There's Google's privacy policy. I didn't open each of the sub-clauses, but you can yourself go on your Google Chrome and you can check how long it is. I've given you Newmark's. Look at privacy policy for Newmark. Let's count how many pages. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's 20 pages long. And you can see how long the narrative is under each of the sub-clauses. So this is what your policy document is pretty much going to look like. Obviously related to your business. And that's why I've given you this example, so that you can start thinking about it tangibly.
Okay, Mel, there's another question. Does the Act definitely require physical signed permission or consent?
Yes. Please refer to Section 66 of the POPI Act. Not only does the Act require signed consent, but the form for the consent is regulated. The design of the form is part of the POPI Act. We covered that in session 2. So as long as you know what that form looks like and you take the content from that form, you can incorporate that in different formats. It doesn't have to be an attachment to an email. You can condense it, make it much shorter. And if you have an IT guy at your organization, or once you've subcontracted an IT guy to start talking with your team on your privacy requirements, that IT guy could even help you to develop that consent into a document that you can WhatsApp to your client. And if your client opens it on their cell phone, they can complete it on the cell phone and just send it by WhatsApp back to you. But there has to be proof. And yes, the form for consent is regulated. It's not just a telephone or a WhatsApp. It's fine. It's fine. You can go ahead. That's not sufficient. The actual format of the consent is also prescribed by the regulator.
There was just another question to ask, that if it is fingerprint protected on your cell phone, if that is sufficient?
Well, again, your IT guy or the contracted IT department or company will have to explain to you what we call it biometric. So biometric identification, what that secures. And do you need to change that? And does that mean that Microsoft doesn't have access to the content? So you need to understand what exactly passwords mean, what it protects, what it doesn't protect. And for that, hopefully next session, Brent, our cybersecurity specialist, I'll ask him specifically about these questions so that he can share a little bit more from an IT perspective. But it might not be enough. It might not be enough. If your cell phone gets stolen, the crooks can reset your cell phone completely, your device. Then your fingerprint identification is worthless. So the back office data needs to be deleted or it needs to be moved, even if you've got a password and a fingerprint identification. And even, that little figure that you draw, you can have all three in place. A crook can steal your phone and can still have access to all your contacts. So those are the things that an IT specialist must discuss with your organization or with your office. It's very, very important. Okay?
Okay, here's a long one. The app-based communication, I think and believe, is vital moving forward as we are increasing in virtual communication. So the more we secure ourselves and our clients will be highly important. More so, all of us also educating our clients so they don't fall prey to schemers. Confidentiality and privacy of all businesses must be more secure. So thank you. Okay, so sorry, that's not a question.
Yeah, guys, I mean, Denzel, thanks. In terms of your comment, it cannot be more true now than ever before. It's a matter of reputation. So for anyone attending today who still feels a bit, you know, gutful of POPI, and you know, it's not really going to affect you. It's more for these app-based businesses where you know, you book online and you do your banking online. It's really, for me, a question of trust. I want STBB's clients to see all the hyperlinks everywhere, on my signatures, on the reports we send, on our app, on our WhatsApps. We want to be able to say in our standard documentation, STBB is compliant with the POPI Act and GDPR. Here is a link to our website where you can see our privacy policies. I want to be proud of the fact, like Google is, like Microsoft, they have already done theirs. They've already done their privacy policies following June's announcement. They haven't waited until July next year. I mean, Google is such a good example. The new policy, which I showed you here, was implemented the 28th of August. So it's absolutely brand new. This one here, there, effective, 28 August 2020. And there's the archived versions. So if you go on Google, you can actually look at the previous privacy policies, which aren't effective anymore. And you can even download the privacy policy on a PDF. You guys must also do this on your website, and so must we. So Google is, for me, a good guidance of what you and I must be doing. They're already doing it, and they've been doing it since 28 August 2020. So this Google privacy policy is definitely going to help all of us to develop one which is sustainable and which deals with all the elements, all the different devices, etc. Okay. Okay, everybody, it was absolutely lovely to host you again for our session today. I think someone, yeah, Michelle, thank you. You put the details regarding our next session. It's 30 September at 12 o'clock. Please look out for the invitation from your key account manager and also social media. And I hope you have a very successful week. The rest of the week, spring is here. It's beautiful weather in Cape Town for all our participants up north. I know it's also very hot up in Gauteng. You know what? We've just got to smile. We'll get through it. By next year, this time, we're going to be looking back and going, gosh, it's all fine. POPI is fine. Our policy is fine. So I'll see you guys at the next session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mal.
Thanks, Mal.